when you call yourself a wizard, pardon if I'm misquoting you, does that imply you knowing how to somehow manipulate this so-called magic? No, what's that?
But it was the right term in the sense of, if somebody tells you they're a witch, I didn't used to believe that. And in some cases, I
no,
still
if a woman tells me she's a witch, I'm totally on that. You know, I believe that.
So that's not the norm in North America.
I'm not entirely new to this platform, but this bitch keeps surprising me time to time. So can you bring your pipe once again?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what real men do. I've just said it on my Instagram. If you consider yourself a real man, you first of all, as you attest to that, you absolutely must have a beard. Well, yours is can be truly called a beard. Yeah. Something in the way, I guess.
Mine's purely out of laziness, and at this point, I just don't know what I'd look like without it. But I get it. I like the feel of a pipe. I actually, so I vape. I have like a dry herb vape for cannabis, and I love it for that. I don't do the vaping with the oils though. I haven't gotten into that yet. I used to chain smoke, right? I used to just like a pack and a half of cigarettes a day.
Right. Yeah.
And then just I like it for thinking, but you know, obviously the other parts of it really suck. So a pipe every once in a while, cigars, vaping here and there. Yeah.
Well, so listen, I don't even know, since we've just discovered that we are both connoisseurs of pipe, I don't even know if we'll get into those topics that we were going to get into. That might take us a little bit of time. Tell me, I'd like to know how you got into smoking a pipe, because that seems to be an interesting story for each individual.
Drugs. So I live in Canada. Cannabis was legalized a little while ago. I used to smoke it a bunch when I was younger, and then I stopped. And then it became legal again, and I was just like, "Oh, I'm going to get back into this now." Yeah. And admittedly, like, I had smoked when it was illegal because it's not like it was ever enforced. But the difference between it as a lifestyle choice and something here and there is sort of what shifted. And then when I looked into it, I just like a long, like some people like bongs. I like a long pipe. I find that cools it down well.
I've just ordered one. Before I got disrupted with the connection, I've just said, then I ordered, how's that called? Charge warden. You know, that type of pipe, charge warden. Yeah, that's the type of pipe that's the longest. That kind of kind of pipe. Yeah.
I like that because by the time the smoke gets to you, it's nice and cool. It doesn't burn. Yeah. It's just, it's a nice smoke.
Well, for me,
there's something to be said for thinking and smoking a pipe is a great experience.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
Sure. Yeah. You know, my problem is that I've been thinking about it. I'm an English teacher, and I usually smoke when I teach my classes online. And I found myself thinking that maybe that's not the way. You know, maybe it's got to be a little bit more kind of. I don't want like lonesome time, like individual time. So you're distracted by another person. It's like reading a book. That's why actually this pipe has to go on, because first of all, the smoke gets a bit cooler by the time right? And also it's easily combined with reading, because when you hold this little one next to your mouth, and then you got to hold the book in one hand, it's not that comfortable.
Plus it's a good aesthetic. That's tricky. I mean, teaching and smoking is like, so I'm a coder. So every time I've taught, I've had a keyboard in front of me. And 100%, I can't easily smoke and do my. I have to like have set time aside to be able to do that. But I envy that. I used to work for. They're called Via Rail. It's Canada's version of Amtrak, so like our public train company. Back in like the late 90s and early 2000s when you could still smoke there. And I remember like working in the canteen and selling chips to kids while I was smoking, just like the weirdest world back then, right? Now you don't smoke anywhere at all. The fact that I smoke a pipe, people are just like, what? You can't smoke? Yeah.
Do you get a lot of crazy looks at you when are you ever out in public with a pipe?
No, I mean, I sit on my balcony or I'll like go sit at a or whatever. But I mean, look, I'm of the view that like smoking ain't great. Like again, I smoked a pack and a half for like a decade, right?
Really?
It's nice being able to walk and breathe and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So like it's nice. Yeah.
It's like some people trying to do their best to prove that smoking a pipe is considerably less harmful for your health, and I guess to a certain extent it is, but you can't be truly delusional to claim it doesn't do no harm.
Yeah, I mean, moderation is probably the key with everything. Right. Honestly, like don't do everything to excess, frankly.
For sure. Yeah. So how long, when you smoke a pipe, how long does one bowl last you?
Oh, Jesus. I don't know. I'm basically always high unless
Yeah.
I have my children with me and
Right.
don't want to be that level of like compromise
Yeah.
around them. I like being
Right.
high. I'm just like a little bit of always high. So like
Yeah.
I'll have a bowl on my pipe maybe once every couple days. And by a bowl I mean like I'll sit on my chair outside and just like
Right.
get good and high. And
Yeah.
then the rest of the time I'm just always puffing on this thing, which
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
adore. You?
Right. I've been trying to minimize the time, honestly, because I used to smoke hot, so to speak, and then I completely missed the whole kind of ritual of smoking a pipe. It's supposed to,
Yeah.
when we're talking about tobacco, I've never filled my
Yeah.
pipe with cannabis. I don't know, that would be, that might take me to some unexpected, destinations probably.
Yeah,
But
I mean that's
it's
what it's for. I mean moderation is the key there
right.
again, right? Whatever it comes down to. Like
Yeah.
when I talk about I'm always puffing on this, the quantities in there, I smoke probably a gram of weed a day. Back
Okay.
when I was in my early 20s and I smoked like and I was a pothead, I would smoke like
Yeah.
3 or 4 grams of weed a day.
What
Right?
about
So again,
edibles? Mess with those?
oh yeah, man, I love
Yeah.
edibles. Edibles are great.
Yeah.
You can buy them at the stores here.
Right.
The quality of them is hit or miss. The stuff that is made by people who really care about it is always better than the stuff you buy from the government. But it's cool that you can buy it from the government. That's neat.
What
Yeah.
about them shrooms? Are you into
Um,
those?
I am. You can get them not legally. They're still technically
Yeah.
illegal in Canada, but you can order them online and somebody will deliver them
Right.
to you. Same as DMT as well.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. You can
Yeah.
get all of those things, Can
Yeah.
get all. Have you ever had any crazy like revelation on shrooms? Any life transformative experience?
So like, I don't think that I've never had one that I would easily be able to like summarize as like here is my main thought, here's my main takeaway. I've had a couple fairly big trips, like 3 to 4 grams. I don't think I've ever done a heroic dose. I've had nice experiences that have like brought me closer to people, and that's cool. Like
Right,
that's
right,
transformative. Whether it's like for the rest of your life or for the moment, that's just nice.
Yeah. Some people claim that they are purely entertaining, and others claim that they are more of a medicine type, and you must be, more careful, cautious when using them. I guess it's something in the middle. You may mess with them just if you want to entertain yourself or others. That's totally fine, in my opinion.
I'm usually of the view that it's both. Whenever it's like
Right.
some people say this or some people say that, it's usually like, well, people often find what they go looking for, yeah, especially when
Correct.
it comes to
Yeah.
like you're piping into some stuff in your brain that you have limited awareness of. So your experience is influenced a lot by what you expect to find, and regardless of whether or not you admit it to yourself, like because it's all happening inside you in one way or another, right?
Do
It's
you
weird.
run into sometimes those people that you just talk to them and you go, man, yeah, this motherfucker would greatly benefit from taking some shrooms? Some people like that?
Oh yeah, I think that's basically. I don't want to say everybody. I'm
Right.
of the view that like there's basically a global mental health crisis. I think that everybody right now could benefit from something in the way of some kind of therapy. I don't know what that looks like, but and then that becomes a conversation about like what's the most effective way to get that out there. And a lot of the research in that space is about psychedelics. So I think that like I think most people would benefit from. So the specific term, have you ever heard about neuroplasticity? Is that a term
Yes,
you've come across
sure.
before? Yeah. So like it's basically like do you have snow? I don't know where you live.
Oh, hell yeah. In
Yeah.
Ukraine,
Okay. So cross country skiing, right? So neuroplasticity is like cross country ski tracks. So you're used to going down the same trail over and over and over again. And then psychedelics, I've heard it described, and my experience with it sort of aligns with that.
I know where you're going. I know
it lets
exactly
you
what you're
make
going
new
to say.
ski tracks.
Yes,
Yeah, right?
yes.
Yeah.
That's Paul Stamets' comparison, right? Did you take it from Paul Stamets?
No, I took. We were going to adopt kids years ago, and I had to go through training to adopt kids, and it was included in that like trauma informed training. But yeah,
Paul
I'm sure that's
Stamets
where it comes from. Yeah.
He's arguably the most evident, probably proponent and scientist when it comes to psychedelic drugs, and he described it in a way as if the new snow falls onto those traces, and then you're able to take your sleigh in a different direction, other than just going one way. Yeah, it's like new snow.
So I don't know that this would have necessarily come from him, because I don't expect that the Canadian government would have had official training for prospective parents based on psychedelics. So I think it's interesting that psychedelics came to a similar conclusion as the other methods, and that like further reinforces that there's something there. whatever gets us to neuroplasticity, I think is critically needed for a lot of people.
Oh,
right
yes. And
now.
well, yeah, I think it actually gives us a nice trampoline in a way to get to ease into what we initially supposed to talk about. Now, have you ever played with the thought of aliens being extra dimensional and psychedelics drugs allowing us access to those dimensions?
Yeah.
That's not a far-fetched, I think, opinion, right, in the circles.
So my whole like angle on this really comes at it from a perspective that I don't think is seen very much online, which doesn't say a lot about its viability, but I do think that like it's based on what is being seen and described by other people. So I'm a coder. I think about like systems. I'm like a software engineer. I work with APIs, and APIs like how you send data between different systems. And so I spend a lot of my time thinking about like imagined systems and stuff like that. And so when I think about how this could be working and how it could connect, it looks like consciousness relates to this in a way that is not accepted by mainstream science. Like it looks like in order to figure this out, we have to be like, oh, we're wrong about a bunch of stuff. And I don't know that that's a thing that we know how to do.
Do you lean closer to the opinion of them being more of a physical creature that come from outside, or something that's always been present here in different shape or form?
So I think it's probably a bunch of different things. I think so. My view of consciousness is that it is some sort of medium of travel and communication. So I think that something about information and energy can be transmitted through consciousness, and as evidence of that, our existence could be held as evidence of that, because like look at the information, the energy that we're processing by being conscious. So it looks like UFOs or UAP or the phenomena are technology that further interface with reality in that way. And then the question becomes, what is it connecting to? And then you look at all the weird fucking cases of things that like some of it's bullshit. A bunch of UAP stuff, a bunch of UFO stuff is obviously bullshit. But a bunch of the stuff that can't seem to be refuted is like really fucking crazy. And so the question is, how is that really fucking crazy stuff real? And it's like, if a bunch of stuff is happening as a result of a medium of travel and communication that we're not aware of, that's what that would look like. Because then what happens is there's this way that stuff can happen that we don't know exists, and here's the way we think everything exists, and then stuff is happening in that other way, and it's interfacing with our way. So it briefly interfaces with what we think is correct or right about the world, and it breaks our minds because it shouldn't be there. Does that make sense?
Yes, I do my best to follow. Surely, how do you go about discerning which instance of a UFO interaction is credible and which is otherwise?
So I have no clue. Do you know who Diana Walsh Pasulka is? Have you heard about her?
No.
So she was interviewed by a couple of the like interesting podcasts that cover this subject. I think she was on Lex Friedman's podcast. He's got a lot of the same guests as Joe Rogan regarding the subject. Anyway, so she's a religious studies professor, and she wrote a book called American Cosmic, and her whole angle on this is that the UFO thing is probably going to be the first religion that gets proven true in our history, because what's happening is people have assumptions and beliefs and views about a metaphysical thing, and the trajectory of the information coming out around this is such that it looks like we're going to learn what's going on kind of soon. And then because that religious history angle exists to predict into the future, it also goes backwards. You could look through our history with like a religious studies lens, and see that there's
repetitive
culture,
elements.
And so it comes back to that medium of travel and communication that we don't think is there, that allows stuff to happen that we don't think should happen, and then it pops away for some reason. I don't know. That's my theory anyway, and that allows for basically anything. Basically anything can happen because it looks like ideas and thought and belief are part of reality in some way.
When you say when you speak of energies, what exactly do you mean by an energy? Because I've been messing with this thought about bodies sort of emanating certain energies after the physical body dies, and that's one of those theories that something must be left after the physical body has died. So what is that energy exactly? to you?
So I
What's
came to
left?
this in an interesting way. So I'd say like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was like pretty solidly an atheist and a materialist.
Mm,
And then I was trying to reconcile. So like somebody said something once that I thought was really interesting. There's the blue pill and the red pill concept.
mhm,
So you take
mhm,
the red pill, you go in all in on something. So
mhm,
the red pill on religious people is that they really believe what they say. Like the
mhm,
red pill on religious people is that like there's no doubt about this stuff being some
mhm.
kind of real. And I was like, how can I reconcile that with the fact that I've got so much science that's saying this stuff isn't
Right.
real,
Yeah, it's hard to
right?
reconcile indeed,
Yeah,
for sure.
because I want to trust people to not be like mostly crazy, because that's what
Mhm,
science would have us believe about religious and
mhm,
mystical and magical phenomena, is that most people throughout history are wrong and crazy. And I
mhm,
don't like I don't like having that view about people. That seems kind of shitty.
mhm,
So I was trying to think about this, and then what I realized was we're all energy. And an example of this is like, and this isn't me saying this. There's an astrophysicist named Konstantin. I forget his last name. It's Russian. He's from somewhere in the States. In a podcast once, he said everything is energy because mass is just energy that doesn't travel through the dimension of time, because
mhm,
that's what
mhm,
potential energy is. So
mhm,
so there's energy in the form of stuff that moves and happens, and then there's
mhm,
energy in the form of stuff that's waiting to do something. And so you could describe that waiting period as energy not traveling through the dimension of
mhm,
time. So it still exists in space to
mhm,
be actioned
mhm,
against, but it doesn't exist
mhm.
in time because it's not doing anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Sort
sure.
of.
Yeah.
Okay, so then consciousness can be energy that doesn't travel through the
Mhm,
dimensions of space.
mhm,
Consciousness is happening in time alongside us, but
mhm.
it connects in some different way. Does that make sense?
And
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and once the body is dead, how do you think that energy reveals itself?
Right. So I was thinking about art and work and created stuff and family and children and love and all of the manifestations of our actions in the world and how they sort
Mhm,
of reverberate into the world around us afterwards. Because that is just energy persisting after we die. There's a
mhm,
nice moment in like one of the Marvel shows about this that said it really beautifully. Um, and so that was up until, I don't know, I looked into the UFO thing. And then I looked more
mhm,
into the UFO thing. And I was
mhm,
just like, oh shit, no, there's just an afterlife. It
mhm,
looks like there's just science that says that it's called afterlife sciences. It's fringe science that
mhm,
looks more fringe than it is because it's
mhm,
underfunded and it's undersupported.
mhm,
But you look at the efforts that have made to credulously explore this stuff, and like I don't really have any doubt at this point. I think that
mhm,
like if you look at the sheer quantity of people that believe in something like an afterlife, and then if you look at the sheer number of experiences that have been described by people that
mhm,
highlight something like an afterlife, and then if you look at how little we still understand about science and the
mhm,
universe and what's around us, and I can understand being unwilling to be more open to
mhm,
magic. I get that. And then you look at UFOs and you're like, oh shit, it's magical
mhm,
technology. There's just
mhm,
100% magical technology flying
mhm,
around our planet that nobody wants to talk about because maybe it means there's an afterlife.
mhm.
That's fucked.
Would yeah, yeah, most likely, but it's as well as consuming to, at most consuming to me at least, because
Yeah.
everything that's unknown is both scary but also
Yep.
intriguing and exciting. I think is just part of the nature. Would it be a fair assessment of magic as something that has not been yet anyhow described
Yeah.
and untangled
Yeah.
to
When I call it
help
magic, I'm being
people?
a troll. I'm 100%
Oh,
being a
yeah,
troll. I've
that's
been
what I
on the.
was going to
I'm
ask
like
you.
I'm a creature of the internet. I'm kind of a
Yeah,
jackass.
yeah.
The technical term for, so my first blog post about it was years ago, and it was like magic is real and you are under attack. And that
Uh-huh.
was right after I realized that UFOs were a thing. I was like, well, what does that mean about technology and magic, quote unquote, that I don't
Mhm,
understand, but is something that is real and we're not accounting for. And then I
mhm,
started thinking about social networks and what's happening with consciousness at scale and the harm we're experiencing. And my conclusion was, one, magic is real, and two, we're under attack in some way. Is it us attacking
mhm,
ourselves? Is it an accidental attack because we built shitty things? I don't know, but it's an attack.
mhm,
And then later on, when I realized that that was too trolly to be effective, I
mhm,
rewrote it as there are undiscovered physics of consciousness, and
mhm,
we are experiencing parapsychological ecosystem disruption. So what that means is there's undiscovered physics of consciousness, so brain magic, that's a real thing, and we have to have science for it because it looks like it exists and we don't have science for it yet. And then parapsychological ecosystem, so that is like the space of thoughts outside of our bodies where something is happening that we're not measuring, that is being disrupted.
That's what you mean by an attack.
Yeah. So so that ecosystem, that parasite, maybe it's the noosphere. There's terms for it in religious stuff going back ages. Something about reality where thoughts or ideas are. Alien technology does something with that in a way that we haven't predicted, but we can see. And so that system looks like it's also the system where our consciousness exists in some way and probably persists after our bodies end. And that's like shrug emoji, 100% shrug emoji. This is just what it looks like.
When you call yourself a wizard, pardon if I'm misquoting you, does that imply you knowing how to somehow manipulate this so-called magic? No, what's that?
But it was the right term in the sense of, if somebody tells you they're a witch, I didn't used to believe that. And in some cases,
if a woman tells me she's a witch, I'm totally on that. I believe that.
So that's not the norm in North America. By and large, it's changing now. But by and large, that whole occult aspect of things was so niche, and then it was so heavily commodified that it lost a lot of meaning. So I don't know. It's like 800 conversations we could have about what happened there. But so my attempt to get into these conversations was like, so I work at tech, but I also do like stuff with brands. I'm like a startup nerd. And so I wanted to think of what is a brand that allows me to explore this space in a way that I don't even know, accomplishes my goals or something. And wizardry was absolutely where it was going. And it was basically like the domain name wizard.bio was available. And I was like, oh, well, shit, I'm going to get that. That's great. Okay. And then I had my blog was awesome.wizard.guide because, and so, but I was never
still
like,
running?
No, that's all gone. No. But so there's a bit of stuff that I like may have not unintentionally did, but like, without knowing what you're doing, you don't know what you're doing, so you're not going to be effective. Have you ever heard the term hypersigil?
No.
So have you heard the term sigil in like occult stuff? So like if you were to do a ritual and you were to paint something, a symbol, the technical term for that thing is a sigil. And then a hypersigil is something that occult people on the internet mess around with. And it's like doing things on the internet in a way that causes some sort of magical, unexpected output. Is it real? I don't know, but a bunch of people are talking about it like it is. I've never had experiences where it's been functional. I don't think I was a very effective wizard. I had fun with it while I could, but and again, me stepping back from being a wizard doesn't mean it's not real. It's 100% real.
Right.
Yeah.
Where were you taking the information for those things that you were practicing? What was the source of information that you took it from?
Different blogs, different audiobooks, different websites. Like if you go through Audible and look at like the pagan section, there's just a bunch of stuff. And it's an interesting sort of niche industry that's kind of growing. And it should grow because like these people are doing hard work in a space that deserves some sort of credible inspection. There are a couple really good YouTube channels that I think people should look at. One is called Esoterica. It's by Professor Justin Sledge. He's a PhD in a bunch of things or something relevant. I'm not quite sure. He takes a really good religious studies approach to occult things. There's another one called Angela's Symposium. She's a PhD based out of Italy who also looks at this stuff. And then what you discover when you look into it is like, it's taboo, obviously, and also it's taboo and it's been fully researched to the best of everybody's abilities and nobody knows what it is. So like the Catholic Church, if you go into the Vatican archives, there's shit piles of examples of this stuff getting looked at over the years. Same as aliens. Diana Walsh-Pasulka, who I talked about earlier, she's very well connected with the Vatican archives and has looked through there for a number of historical accounts of UFO phenomena. All of this stuff has been looked at, and then nobody knows what to make of it. And some of
Mm.
it is shady, and some of it is terrifying. And so they tell us not to look anymore. That seems to be the pattern.
And it seems a repeated pattern. And sometimes when I think about the fact that in the past, surely a bigger body of evidence somehow happened, and now it is preserved and kept secretly in certain special places. I just felt like back in the day, people just had a fun life. You know, they used to have some adventure. So why do you think current modern day life seems to be way away from that?
Oh, I think that like the shit we have to do to not fail at all the systems we're surrounded by are fucking
Mm-hmm.
us. Like
Yeah,
we like so,
yeah.
and again, like I'm in favor of a bunch of stuff. Oh, are you there? Oh, no, yeah, there you are. I think. Okay, yeah. I'm in favor of like government programs. I like government. I've benefited from government. I like regularly. I'm like happy to see my tax dollars go towards stuff. I've served on like the library board. But all of that being said, all of our systems are garbage, and we're getting fucked all the time by a bunch of people who shouldn't be fucking us.
By limiting us somehow, by not looking enough into our perhaps like spiritual potential of some sort.
I think it's more along the lines of like just expecting everybody to be a certain way and expecting things to go a certain way, and to not be tolerant of diversity while also being blind of that. Like it's a weird hypocrisy. I don't know how to describe it. It's like we value everyone, but don't be any different than us. And it's like, well, no, that's not.
Yeah, there's contradiction in that.
Yeah,
I do notice that a lot.
And so it relates to fear in a big way. I think there's so much shit that's going on at a macro level that is terrifying and unknown to so many people. Nobody understands how to handle any of it. So anything that scares us, we immediately recoil from. And like so like that's the UFO subject in conversations in our lives. Like, do you talk about this stuff to people in your life and have those conversations go well?
I don't think I even do. Not in like, at least in real life, not in offline, honestly.
Yeah.
And
so that's a thing that says a lot, because
it's almost real. Sad, to be honest. You know, it feels like it's almost sad not to have those kind of conversations. Oh, because they are still frowned upon and laughed at. So
people are afraid, frowning on stuff, laughing at stuff. That's all fear. It's 100% fear. So. It's a trauma reaction. People have been configured to be afraid of a bunch of different things about this subject for a long time, and like. So it's really easy to see that with the UFO subject, but there's a bunch of other stuff like that that's happening too. Like, people don't understand what's going on with geopolitics, all the fucking wars and shit. What's going on in space makes no sense. The economy is a mess everywhere. The environment is a mess. All of this stuff is like super confusing and scary to everyone. But the UFO subject is probably the most interesting to me in like a detached, let's not lose sight of the fact that this is horrible sense. Because I think it's going to play out faster, and I think that the people that can influence it is actually really small. I think that you actually only need to win a really small fight to see really, really big change in the UFO fight, and I think that's really interesting.
You said you've started listening to their latest Rogan's episode about UFO with Jeremy Corbell, and I don't remember the name of that second guy. So that was something interesting. George Knapp. Yeah, that's a big name, honestly, in the UFO circle. Yep. So that was something interesting said. Then I keep thinking about the fact that one of the primary reasons why people might be worried and skeptical, and why UFO, so to speak, confirmation might cause a lot of mayhem, is the fact that we may discover that we have been almost manufactured by them, programmed by them, created by them. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you if you think that could really cause that much of a mayhem and shenanigans in society. Don't you? I mean, if I project it on myself, I think, well, shit, if aliens get confirmed and I understand that I'm just a product of them, me as a race, that would be honestly fun. I don't think that would put my life at risk or destroy critical facets of my life. But do you think that's of a real threat to humankind, this possibility?
So I guess the question is, absent that, where do you think you came from? You evolved from goop that happened to be combined on this planet randomly, versus you came from goop that happened to be seeded on this planet. And it's like, So to me, that's easy enough to work through. And then it becomes an issue when you think, well, no, I think that God created me at some point in what clearly scientifically wasn't 6,000 years ago, but was in some way. And this isn't that. And then that becomes the conflict.
So it undermines a lot of
it
beliefs.
does, but it undermines everybody in a way that I don't think makes anybody wrong. And I think that's really important to look at. I think that like, I'm a fan of religion in the sense of I think that it brings a lot of value to the lives of people. That like it's an important tool to have in our psychological and sociological toolkit to handle really weird unknown things and to come together in shared purpose. And also like it unites us about the really important things that are hard to connect on. So like that's cool. That doesn't have to go away. And then it's also kind of always been a power structure as well. And you can't act like that's not part of it because it's more evident now than ever that religious power structures have like been a part of all of these things the entire way through. And so like that power structure from where I stand isn't really what connects the people who I care about with their faith. You know what I mean? Like their faith gets there a different way, and that's just the bureaucracy that you need to have when people are around. And like I don't know. Again,
so you're saying
I try
basically
what you're trying to be an optimist,
right? And you're trying to say, as far as I can see, that by even confirming the aliens were our creators, that would still not critically undermine people's maybe reasoning into religion.
No, I don't think so. I think probably based on this stuff I'm saying about there being a parapsychological ecosystem and how alien technologies seem to do something there, I think we're within a decade of science that looks like it proves something like polytheism. So the concept of multiple gods, the concept of embodied gods, the concept of gods in nature. I think where we're going with AI is going to prove that life isn't just structure like us. Life is also something like collective intelligences. Life is also something like complex patterns in matter that connect with something that we don't measure yet. But the thing about that is, I don't think that we're going to prove monotheism. I bet you in all the alien whatevers that there's still like arguments about is there a creator? I don't know. Just because, of course, right? Like that's the type of shit that's going to get thrown at us.
Yeah, do you think aliens somehow eloquently integrate into the Bible, and maybe those passages about how God created first man and woman, don't you think that might be in the future somehow cleverly intertwined in the aliens' origins or something?
So without intending to disrespect the Bible, which I think contains a lot of important lessons and is a really important part of our cultural heritage. And so,
the Bible.
So my background is I'm Canadian, I'm Catholic, but like I wasn't paying attention, so like I was baptized and stuff, but it doesn't count. And then I was an atheist for most of my life, and now I'm just confused.
Yeah, me too. You've just described myself.
Yeah.
Same.
So my label for myself is I call myself a non-theist. It's a whole other conversation, but anyway, I do think that, shoot, what was I saying before I said that? I'm rambling.
Bible. My question was about aliens and Bible intertwining.
Yes. So I think that, all of that stuff, the Bible is a story that we've had to tell ourselves to remember important things for every generation for as long as the first stories in the Bible were written. And just because it's really important to a bunch of people doesn't mean it's not also that and prone to the types of operational issues that come from that type of thing. And so I think that at its core, the Bible is a story about love and about taking care of each other and all of that stuff. And I think at their cores, all the other religions try to be about that in their own way, in a way that integrates with culture that I think is telling. So no, I think that with the right leadership, any of the religions could have worked through this at any point in the past forever. Right. So like they're obviously waiting for the right push, but they could do it. There's nothing to stop the Pope from being like, yeah, here's what we know. Here's what we learned. Here's the dossier that I received as Pope. And here's why I get this dossier and the president doesn't, because I'm here forever. And the president just sort of comes and goes. You know what I mean? So clearly the Pope knows way more than right. And so like the decision could be made to try to use this to unite us and hasn't. And that's sad. And it doesn't change the fact that this will eventually be used to connect us. And will it be used to dominate us or will it be used to unite us? I don't fucking know. but like it's a fact about reality as far as we can tell. That like something about the thing all of the religions are going on about that science has said for centuries isn't real is real, and we need to have science for it because it influences our minds. Like there's no way to know that. So there's this weird thing about gravity where all of the atoms in my body are gravitationally bound to everything else in the universe, if only slightly. Just that's just how gravity works. So there's no way to know that my mind and your mind aren't somehow like mimetically bound, ideologically bound, energetically bound, and not necessarily through this visual thing, but just through some fucking field that we can't even see that is ubiquitous. Oh, also, here's my astrology. Astrology. There's definitely something to astrology. We shit on astrology because it's wrong a lot and it's confusing in ways that are illogical. And so it's easy to dismiss it. And also it was one of the dominant decision-making tools throughout basically every culture in our history until we got to computers. And now we've got computers. And I'm sorry to say that machine learning looks like astrology. What the big nerds are doing with machine learning is they're discerning patterns from the material of reality. All right, I'm gonna let you
Discerning
talk.
pattern from the material of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think something synonymous could be said of religions, right? How at one point. So, what do you think Christianity currently is at loss? Because I keep hearing more and more people saying how Christianity is losing the battle, and how more and more people are losing faith, and it becomes less rigid in its fundamental beliefs
So I think
compared
that's
to Islam, for instance.
So I think that's an operational issue. I think that people's faith sort of comes and goes, and then the social structures that they associate with related to their faith are much more easily manipulatable by external factors like money or like culture or like politics or whatever. But I think people's faith, like, give them people want to believe. Like if you look at the vast majority of human history, people are good and want to believe in good things, and then shit happens to them.
And what is this about our necessity to believe? Is this something built in us, evolutionary? Is this our inner sense of meaning that's lost sometimes?
There was a good conversation about this on the Rogan podcast between Corbell and Knapp and Rogan about like, because if we're seated, maybe that's programmed, right? Maybe that's a part of it. I don't know. My personal levels of belief have come and gone over the years and been all over the place. So I really don't know.
And have you reconciled with that? Because, like, sometimes I just stop in the middle of my shit and I think, man, what am I? Am I this or that? Because there was Christopher Hitchens. You may have heard of him, this prominent journalist. He was one of those super militant atheists. And he famously said regarding, how do you call those people that are neither this nor that?
Agnostics?
Agnostics, He said sooner or later you're going to have to make a decision whether you're sitting on a toilet or on a chair. Yeah. Because sooner or later, push comes to shove. Yeah. And I just can't philosophically, I guess, reconcile with being in between. So do you conflict with yourself about that?
So I've been all over the place on this in a bunch of different ways. And also, like, I deliberately explore these places and will adopt like I try to embody this stuff when I'm like, oh, how do people feel about this stuff? And so my answer is I haven't. It's all a mess. I haven't figured it out yet. I don't know where I'm going with it, honestly.
Are you intending to sooner or later figure that out?
So my issue is, I don't know that you know this. So I started all of this by inventing a religion, as I needed a brand. So as like a thought exercise in 2018, I had to invent a religion for a social media platform I made. Okay. And I did that that's why I talk about religious studies professors and stuff like that, because I took a really academic approach to it. I was like, what is known about this space of ideas? And the reason I ended up there is because, actually just a complicated thing. But anyway, so I've been trying to manufacture my own understanding or awareness of this stuff and reconcile all of these things for years. I'm no closer now than I was before. And when I look at the people that really inspire me in these spaces, and there's a bunch of them, there's a lot of cool people that say really interesting stuff and like live their lives in interesting ways. The best ones don't seem to know that much of what's going on either. And I think there's insight to that. I think hubris is important. Not hubris. What's the word? Is it hubris? I don't know. I'm French.
Yeah, I wonder if it's even acceptable these days not to have an opinion about something. It was Marcus Aurelius who said sometimes you don't have to know, right?
Yeah.
You are okay with not partaking in something. And maybe that's the best thing that we should adopt to,
So
not
it is
necessarily having a
okay,
stance.
but you have to be able to defend it. There was
Yeah.
I was in a meeting. Where was it? It was a corporate thing, I think, but it related to a client at a company I worked at that was a government client or something, and they were talking about how much to communicate about this website we were making, and I
Hmm.
think, and it was like, well, we shouldn't tell them this at all, and it was like this is back during data privacy
Hmm.
discussions when it looked like hopefully that might matter, and then that fight was lost.
Hmm.
And what I said was the you could disclose why you're not disclosing. At minimum,
Hmm.
that's a thing that you
Hmm.
could do. So in the case you're giving of like not having an opinion, that's fine. And nobody could
Hmm.
force you to give your opinion. But also like if it's relevant or if not giving your opinion is in some way causing some sort of thing that is then on you to resolve, then
Hmm.
that's on you
Hmm.
to resolve, right? You got to
Hmm.
own your
Yeah.
shit. You
Right.
can't not have an opinion because you're afraid to think about it because it's
Right,
there,
right,
right?
right, right. And that's so many people that I keep
Yeah.
seeing not having certain stances, not because well, with some of them, there are those, I think, privileged ones that don't
Mhm.
have an opinion. They seem to be perfectly fine with that. And there are
Yeah.
those that just kind of intellectually, dishonestly run away from that. And it's spottable. You can see if
Yep.
somebody's, it's like there are people who apply multiple strategies, approaches, methods, how to become happier. They practice this and that, and maybe they get there or not. And there are those people who are just naturally happy. They've already obtained something that other person's been doing,
Yeah.
trying to do for so long. So
I used to resent
whatever it
those
is.
people, and now I
Yeah.
envy them, and I try to be like them. Whenever
Yeah,
I meet
me
one of
too.
them, I'm like,
Me
"Oh
too.
fuck, you got it locked in.
Oh yeah.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I'd like all of this. Thank you."
Right. Right.
So the thing about you hit the nail on the head on how it's multi-causal. Different people have different reasons for not wanting to
Hmm.
engage with this stuff. And it typically, in my experience, comes down to some kind of fear. They're afraid of something about themselves. They're afraid of something about the world.
Hmm.
It's valid, though. Fear is a rational thing.
Hmm.
So I try not to be judgmental of
Hmm.
them for being unwilling to engage on it. There's a really interesting anecdote that I just think is so profoundly insightful, and I don't know what to do with it. Did you know that we didn't see the color blue until fairly recently?
Really? No.
So and
Was blue recently invented?
so technically yes. So basically what that sentence means, and it's one of those science stories it's in a paper and it's described one way in the paper, and then it was communicated on social media in a simplified way that's not totally accurate and it loses part of the
Hmm.
story. So the real thing is, in the absence of blue dyes, where we could have technical language around the color and concept of blue,
Hmm.
we weren't able to engage with the blueness of things the way we
Hmm.
can now.
Hmm.
And so that's part of what is happening with a lot of these things. People don't have healthy examples of how to consider
Hmm.
or be open to this stuff, so they run from it. Because what else would you do? It's terrifying to hear something like, "Oh, maybe aliens bred us,
Hmm.
thousands of years
Hmm.
ago." And like, what do you do with that,
Hmm.
right? You run from it, and that's why everybody's just waiting for somebody to tell them it's
Yeah.
okay to think about.
Are you a proponent of making it public, or do you lean into, say, keeping it secret for the common good, like a lot of
Um,
people think?
I don't think you can keep it public. I think you can only have conflict about it
Yeah. So
because
sooner or later
it's
it
at the
will
core
be
of everything.
exposed.
It's at the
Yeah.
core of everything. There's something.
Hmm.
So, have you heard of panpsychism or analytic idealism?
I don't think so.
Okay, so excuse me. We have a materialist view of reality as the main
Hmm.
scientific paradigm. So, at the base of everything is matter. Alternate paradigms are things like panpsychism or analytic idealism, and that's more like literally everything is energy, and here's
Hmm.
how it's energy. So in panpsychism, everything is thought, and so at the core of all of the matter is a thought holding the matter together. This
Hmm.
isn't this. Sorry, this is like a shit pile of different people have a bunch of different
Hmm.
opinions, and there's no consensus on this because it's really hard to think about. So like I'm
Hmm.
generalizing and also wrong as I describe this stuff.
Hmm.
And then analytic idealism is a bit easier to wrap my head around because there's one specific guy called Bernardo Kastrup, who's like the main dude I know about who's in this. He talks about it on podcasts. He's a computer scientist, so his approach to it makes sense to me because I've got the similar background. And then also he worked at CERN, so he's got an interesting background at physics and all of that stuff. And it really comes down to like reality is the mind of nature. So we are your subjective conscious experience is like a dashboard interfacing with all of the mind of nature as a mind of itself, interfacing in some way. And the interface is all of the matter that we've made everywhere by imagining it. So like A, that's crazy. B, that's scientifically plausible, right? It's just you have to change your ontology.
Yeah, the paradigm, the perspective.
Yeah.
What do you make out of that leak that was discussed on my latest episode and that 4chan leak? You've read it?
Oh, so I didn't look into it. I don't. I don't like looking at current stuff that's not official. Because I don't trust anything. And a recent example of that is, did you see the re-release of the flight of the Malaysian Airlines getting abducted by UAP? Have you seen this? So the story of this footage, and I'm going to talk about this instead of the thing you asked about because I don't know how to contribute to the thing you talked about. It looks like a big weird thing. So the last big weird thing I engaged with was right after the Malaysian Airlines flight went missing. I guess around that time, some concurrent video footage was leaked, that sort of said it was one angle was a drone, so like a Raptor drone by the US, and then another angle was a satellite. And what both of these feeds show was the plane banking surrounded by 3 Tic Tacs, which then proceeded to speed up really fast, and then the whole thing flashed and vanished.
Wow.
And so
what year are we talking? Was it recent?
So this footage came out shortly after the flight went missing. And then a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, it resurfaced and started getting play again as being a viable thing. And then it resulted in everybody diving into it. Like, is this real? Is this not real?
And what was the year when this Malaysian
2014. Oh, so shit. This was, 8 years ago. No, 9 years ago. Jesus. But the thing is, it's not debunked, and it's debunked. It's like Schrodinger's conspiracy. So because apparently there's a version of the video that shows what looks like a sprite effect that's been used in other video effects generated things. Like it's a pattern in light that you can identify and recognize. And so that's there. But apparently the source of that video isn't the original source of the first video, so it might not be debunked. And so this comes back to systemic distrust. People don't understand what systems to trust on any of this stuff. Nobody knows where to go on this. The US government should be able to very clearly say this is authentic or it's not. And if they're not willing to do that, it's like a real fucking problem for everybody in the world. It just is.
Wait, so let me just for a second take us back to that plane that just disappeared. What's the official stance on it? What's the conclusion? It just went off radars and never returned?
Yeah, it's a huge conspiracy thing. They were looking for it for days. It was flying off of the coast of Australia in that big expanse of the Pacific. The theories are, I think the most plausible theory is that they lost cabin pressure, everybody lost consciousness, and the plane just flew until it crashed.
Damn.
And then there's reasons to believe.
How many people were aboard?
It was like a 747. It was like a full-on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
They disappeared. That's crazy.
And so the thing is, there's wreckage that was found, and then I guess the wreckage that was found is potentially in dispute. And again, it's because there's nobody to trust on any of this stuff. Like, we're expected to live in a world without conspiracies, and yet we are fully surrounded by conspiracy. It's such a stupid way they expect us to live and not go crazy.
And you're saying that those recent videos that have been surfacing about these Tic Tacs surrounded that plane are of questionable origin, and those videos are disputable. Right?
I'm saying that it's what people on the internet said.
Yeah,
right. That's what it always comes down to.
Man, imagine if them bastards fucking took a plane with 70 people on board.
Well,
That's insane.
The follow-up research and discussion into this was, here's a bunch of other weird unknown plane mysteries. So like one of the big conspiracies is that they're here and they've been here essentially for way longer
That's what
than
the
us.
leak says.
Yeah, and they exist in the ocean in some way. They have a mobile underwater base. That makes so much sense that it's like it's scary how much it makes sense. We've
never explored the ocean.
Yeah.
Right.
So I forget where I heard this. Do you know that we haven't Was this on your podcast? Actually, we haven't scanned the bottom of the ocean. That's
Yeah,
like
we
whenever.
might have said that.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't
don't
know that.
scientists say that it's only like 10% that's been studied or something of the ocean?
But even the topographical maps, when you look at the map of the world and see the map of the ocean floor, that's not accurate. That's a guess based on wave patterns.
Right.
So we have no idea what it looks like down there.
Yeah, that is insane.
Yeah,
that
like you could
insane.
literally have a city-sized underground metal sheet enclosing some underwater structure. You could have like there's a UFO report that is a football-sized red rectangle flying over an airbase. Like the shit that is apparently credible makes no fucking sense, but is also real.
That's fucking insane to imagine a football field flying above your head. That ain't a little tic-tac shit, right?
Like, why the fuck is that red? Wow. Well, so here's the thing. So light is so tricky, right? Because like light is like everything. I don't know. So like if you look at a tree isn't green. A tree is every color but green because the green light bounces off the tree and that's what hits your eyes. That's fucked.
Yeah. That's I don't even get in that, to be honest. I don't even mess myself.
Another one. So do you know that gravity and light move at the same speed?
Man, I don't even know what the fuck gravity is.
You know? But it moves at the same speed as light. What the fuck is going on?
Well, that's what they say. And again, I don't mean to get into conspiracies there, because I think the thing about these conspiracies that it's been compromised by those conspiracy theorists, and fortunately or unfortunately, lots of those guys are not quite there mentally. I feel like that doesn't mean that all of the conspiracy is bullshit, right? So it's a double-edged sword, I feel like.
Yeah, that's why you need to have some sort of official source that can be trusted, and it can't be a centralized source because people don't trust power right now. There needs to be like a decentralized UFO disclosure thing that actually has.
Well, Rogan is kind of serving that purpose to a certain extent.
Rogan is making a bunch of money and having fun conversations.
Yeah.
Right? Like, good for him.
Yeah, man, awesome. Honestly, speaking about Rogan, you've probably been into his podcast quite a while, I imagine. Right?
On and off. There's some stuff about, but yes, sure.
Well, don't you, I felt like this, this is a trendy thing on Reddit, on Rogan subreddits, to call him post-Texas Rogan, which is considerably different from back when he was in LA. And I low-key miss that kind of Rogan when he would go live on YouTube. Yeah. And then he now seems to be like, I enjoy this Bill Maher episode. Yeah. Maybe you've listened to this, because I love those episodes where Rogan disagrees with somebody or the guest greatly disagrees and he's highly articulate. Yes. So that was pleasant for me to hear the stances on politics, for instance. But he's recently seemed to be, on one way. It's like when they're just basically, pardon my language, dick riding each other. It's like, if you want to get deeper into your currently existing beliefs, please continue that. And people love doing that. We don't like anybody else challenges our beliefs. But I'm a little bit, I feel like Rogan used to be a little bit more contradicting than he is now. Yeah. And that's why
he has to play it safe. It comes back to fear. He's
so.
Afraid of all that he has amassed and how much he can lose if he fucks up on it. And he could say he doesn't care, but he definitely cares because he's Joe Rogan and you got paid like $1/3 of $1 trillion to talk on the internet. Like that's gonna
they say that
totally warp your
that Spotify paid him.
Yeah,
they said that ain't it. Somebody said that it's actually way more. It's just like the official.
And like, no hate. I like it's well done. I'm a fan of culture. Like I criticize it a lot because I think culture is a mess, but like it's a viable way to make money and do things. I think that what you do on it matters. I think Rogan's fucked up, but I think that anybody in his position is going to fuck up. And so really it comes down to like, how well do people admit their fuck ups? That's a big part of it. I think that's also something that's lacking in a lot of leadership politically and stuff like that. The UFO thing is going to be a great example of this. So many of the people who are important and who matter in science, in culture, in politics have been wrong and have like really shit the bed on this issue. And like, they're going to have to own that in some way, really publicly very soon. And like, we've never seen anything like that before. There's always the period where empire collapses and shit falls apart and you learn about it in the history books. and now it's going to get tweeted at us 24/7. And it's like these people are going to have to come to deal with the fact that like they fucked up in a really big way. Either they allowed, in the case of UFOs, they allowed the biggest conspiracy in the history of technology to happen under their noses for generations at the expense of everybody in the world. Like there's going to have to be an accounting for that. And then that leads into I don't know where you stand with climate change. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I think our planet is fucked. I think that we're fucked for like at least a generation. Like we have to like get used to being depressed at the news on the weather for the rest of our lives. I think that's the state we're at. And we have to use this to come together. And I hope to fuck that UFOs get us there, because the pandemic couldn't. Jesus.
Oh, hell no. Yeah. Pandemic proved to be a disaster.
Yep. Oh yeah, actually, I got to run soon, but can I tell you my weird pandemic story? And I would love to do this again, man. Thanks for letting me rant. This is awesome. Will. So I live in the east coast of Nova Scotia, or the east coast of Canada, in a province called Nova Scotia. We have a big international student population. We have a low population in general. The city I live in has 300,000 people, 400,000 people now. I got COVID in February of 2020. They didn't declare COVID in this region until March. The outbreak that I had included thousands of people in this region, included the main city, all of the office towers, all of the cubicles, all of the students in university, all of the healthcare workers. It didn't finally get caught or announced until it made its way at last into one of the nursing homes, like an old folks home. And then people started getting sick, and then people really died because it was bad enough that it killed a bunch of people in one of the nursing homes. And it was bad enough that like it was the sickest I've ever been. My father had it. He had a heart attack a month afterwards. He's recovered, but that whole thing where you have a heart attack a month after you get COVID, that happened to him. So even though we weren't told that this was COVID, it was definitely COVID. It started. Yeah. And it showed, and the data shows so much that we're not willing to discuss. That issue with the UFOs, that we don't want to talk about UFOs, that issue with a bunch of stuff we don't want to talk about. There's one of those for COVID as well. And that is, we fucked up on acknowledging and recognizing COVID in the early stages. That shows us exactly how harmful and how dangerous it was under a wide variety of circumstances. That information has either been suppressed or everybody is spectacularly ignorant. Those are the only two options because it happened.
Let me end up really quickly on one final note and one final question. Whether aliens are hostile or not, where do you stand?
So I think that a bunch of shit's happening. I think that we live in a universe where harm is possible. I think we live in a universe where people who love each other will hurt each other. I think everything is very complicated. I think all you can do is the best you can do and fucking hope that they're doing that too.
Right. Well, shit, it's been a banger of an episode. I'm endlessly grateful, as I always am, to all my guests, and that's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much for joining. I'll be sure to drop it probably tomorrow. And yeah, we're repeating it. We're doing it one more time. I feel like 1 hour is way too little to unfurl all those topics.
Please do, and I'll be watching. I'm so glad I found your channel. You're doing the type of stuff that I'd be doing if I wasn't doing a bunch of other stuff. I really thank you. Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll write you a message. Thank you.